The tower in the mist. William had always been drawn to the mysterious. He found intrigue in the unexplained, the uncanny, and the macabre. So when he heard rumors of a strange murder in the old tower, his curiosity was piqued. The tower was located on the outskirts of the city, shrouded in a perpetual mist. It was said to be haunted, and locals avoided it at all costs. But William was not one to be deterred by superstition. He arrived at the tower on a gloomy evening, the fog so thick that he could barely see his hand in front of his face. He made his way cautiously through the mist, his boots crunching on the gravel path. A tower loomed before him, its silhouette dark and imposing. It was tall and slender, with a spiral staircase winding up its side. William took a deep breath and began to climb. The stairs were narrow and creaky, and the air was cold and damp. William could feel the presence of something else in the tower, something unseen but palpable. He reached the top of the stairs and found himself in a small circular room. The walls were lined with old books and scrolls, and a dusty chandelier hung from the ceiling. In the center of the room was a large table, and on the table was a body. The victim was a young woman, her face pale and lifeless. Her throat had been slit, and her blood stained the white tablecloth. William stood there for a moment, his heart pounding in his chest. He had seen many dead bodies in his time, but this one was different. There was something about it that made his blood run cold. He approached the body carefully and examined it closely. There were no signs of a struggle, and the woman's expression was one of peaceful resignation. William looked around the room, searching for any clues that might lead him to the killer. But there was nothing, no fingerprints, no footprints, no murder weapon. He was beginning to think that the killer was a ghost when he noticed something strange. There was a symbol carved into the table next to the body. It was a strange symbol, one that William had never seen before. He reached out and touched the symbol. As soon as his fingers made contact, he felt a jolt of energy run through his body. He gasped and stepped back. The symbol began to glow, and a swirling vortex of mist appeared in the center of the table. William watched in amazement as a figure stepped out of the vortex. The figure was tall and slender, with pale skin and long, flowing white hair. It was wearing a long white robe, and its eyes glowed with an eerie blue light. "Who are you?" William asked. "I am the guardian of this tower," the figure replied. "I have been waiting for you." "Why?" William asked. "Because you are the chosen one," the figure said. "You are the one who will defeat the darkness." William shook his head. "I don't understand." "The darkness is growing," the figure said. "It is threatening to consume the world. You are the only one who can stop it." "But how?" William asked. "You must find the Sword of Light," the figure said. "It is hidden somewhere in this tower. Only with the Sword of Light can you defeat the darkness." The figure held out its hand to William. "Will you accept your destiny?" William hesitated for a moment. He knew that this was no ordinary request. He was being asked to save the world. But he also knew that he couldn't turn away. He had been chosen for this task, and he had to see it through. He reached out and took the figure's hand. "Yes," he said, "I will accept my destiny." The figure smiled. "Good," it said. "Now go. The Sword of Light awaits." The figure turned and vanished into the swirling vortex of mist. William stood there for a moment, his heart pounding in his chest. Then he turned and walked to the door. He knew that he was about to embark on a dangerous journey, but he was ready. He had to find the Sword of Light and defeat the darkness. It was his destiny. William made his way down the spiral staircase and out of the tower. He stepped into the mist and took a deep breath. He was ready to begin his quest. To be continued. Chapter 2. William made his way down the spiral staircase and out of the tower. He stepped into the mist and took a deep breath. He was ready to begin his quest. He walked for hours, following the path that the guardian of the tower had shown him. The mist was so thick that he could barely see his hand in front of his face. But he kept going, driven by his determination to find the fragments of the Sword of Light. Finally, he came to a clearing in the forest. In the center of the clearing was a large stone. On the stone was a sword, its blade gleaming in the faint moonlight. William approached the stone and picked up the sword. The sword was heavy, but William felt a surge of power as he held it in his hands. He knew that this was one of the fragments of the Sword of Light. As soon as he picked up the sword, the mist began to swirl around him. He could feel the presence of the darkness, but he was not afraid. He had the sword of light, and he was ready to face the darkness. And the mist thickened, and William found himself in a different place. He was standing in a vast wasteland, the ground scorched and cracked. The sky was a sickly green color, and the air was thick with ash. In the distance, William could see a towering fortress. The fortress was made of black stone, and its towers were topped with spikes. William knew that this was the stronghold of the Lord of Darkness. William took a deep breath and marched towards the fortress. He knew that this was where he would find the other fragments of the Sword of Light, and where he would face the Lord of Darkness once and for all. To be continued. Chapter 3. William stepped out of the hidden chamber and into the darkness. The Sword of Light in his hand cast a radiant glow, but it was not enough to dispel the oppressive darkness that surrounded him. He could feel the presence of the Lord of Darkness all around him, its malevolent aura pressing down on him like a weight. But William was not afraid. He had come to this place to defeat the Lord of Darkness, and he would not rest until he had accomplished his mission. He took a deep breath and began to walk forward, his footsteps echoing in the silence. The darkness seemed to thicken around him as he ventured deeper into the labyrinthine tunnels and forgotten chambers of the tower. At times, he would come across strange and disturbing sights, mutilated corpses, arcane symbols etched into the walls, and whispering voices that echoed in his mind. But William refused to let his fear consume him. He knew that the Lord of Darkness was trying to break his spirit, but he would not give in. He fought off monsters and demons that tried to stop him, his sword of light flashing in the darkness. He solved ancient riddles and deciphered cryptic inscriptions, his determination unwavering. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, he reached the heart of the darkness. He stood before a towering obsidian throne, and on the throne sat the Lord of Darkness. The Lord of Darkness was a massive creature with pale skin and glowing red eyes. It was surrounded by a swirling vortex of darkness, its aura so malevolent that it made William's blood run cold. "You have come to challenge me," the Lord of Darkness said in a voice that rumbled like thunder. "But you are no match for me." William raised the Sword of Light. "I will defeat you," he said. The Lord of Darkness laughed, a sound that echoed through the chamber like the death knell of the world. "You are foolish," it said. "No one can defeat me." William charged at the Lord of Darkness, the Sword of Light raised high. The Lord of Darkness raised its hand, and a blast of dark energy shot towards him. William swung the Sword of Light, and the two energies clashed. There was a blinding flash of light and a shock wave that shook the ground. William stood his ground, his grip on the Sword of Light unwavering. The Lord of Darkness narrowed its eyes. "You are stronger than I thought," it said, "but you are still no match for me." The Lord of Darkness raised its hands, and a swarm of demons appeared around it. The demons charged at William, but he cut them down with his sword like wheat before a scythe. William fought his way through the demons, getting closer and closer to the Lord of Darkness. He could feel the power of the Sword of Light growing stronger with each blow. Finally, he reached the Lord of Darkness. He raised the Sword of Light and brought it down with all his might. The blade of the sword pierced the Lord of Darkness's heart, and it let out a piercing scream. The darkness around it began to dissipate, revealing the tower in all its pristine glory. The Lord of Darkness collapsed to the ground dead. William stood over it, his chest heaving. He had done it. He had defeated the Lord of Darkness and saved the world. William lowered the Sword of Light and took a deep breath. He felt a sense of peace and accomplishment that he had never experienced before. He knew that he had made a difference in the world and that his legacy would live on long after he was gone. But William also knew that his work was not yet done. The darkness had been defeated, but it had not been eradicated. It would always be lurking in the shadows, waiting for an opportunity to strike. William turned and walked away from the body of the Lord of Darkness. He knew that he would have to be vigilant, always on the lookout for the first signs of darkness. But he also knew that he was not alone. There were others who fought against the darkness, and together they would keep the world safe. William walked out of the tower and into the sunlight. He looked up at the sky and saw a flock of birds flying overhead. He smiled. The darkness had been defeated, and the world was a better place because of it. To be continued.